So today we're gonna get into a new Halloween special. And this Halloween special is gonna be called The Witch and the Wizard. So this story starts off with a young scientist who is just eager to try to learn about how to be a better wizard. See, his grandpa used to be a wizard. And so he decides, all right, I want to be one of the best wizards. So he enrolls in this night class. It's supposed to be a place where scientists get together and they have the kind of ingredients that he needs in order to do such magic that he needs to do. So he gets everything together. And he's getting ready to go to class. He's got his backpack and everything. He's got all his ingredients, everything that he needs. And before he's walking into class, he's just walking in the hallways. And he sees and he meets Daniela and Victoria, two other scientists that were working on a project together, big project. And he passes by him and he says, "Excuse me, do you think that I can be your science partner?" And they said, "Ew, no." And they keep walking. And he has an attitude problem, so he says, "You know what? One of these days, you're gonna fucking regret that shit." He's like, "Just wait till I become the best wizard." And so he does this thing where he writes down their names, but he puts them on little frog eyes. And he writes their name. He says, "Oh, now I remember you." So he has them on the frog eyes and everything. He puts them away in his pocket. And then he starts getting ready to go to class. He's got a brother and a sister that he sees in the hallway. He says, "Oh, laters, I'll see you later." And he says, "Hey," right before he walks into class, his brother says, "Hey, man, you know, Grandpa left you something." He's like, "Left me what?" He said, "He left you a wand." He said, "I'll drop it off to you after class." So he says, "All right." So his brother takes off and he says, "Laters." So he gets ready to go into class. So he goes into class and he's waiting there. Goes up to his seat or to his desk. And he sits there. Now they're supposed to be doing this project. So he starts going through all his notes. Pulls out a book. And he starts to read it. They will bring them as the Israelites bring their grain offerings to the temple of the Lord in ceremonial clean vessels. And I will select some of them also to be priests and Levites, says the Lord. As the new heavens and the new earth that I will make will endure before me, declares the Lord, so will your name and descendants endure. From one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all mankind will come and bow down before me, says the Lord. And they will go out and look upon the dead bodies of those who rebelled against me. Their worm will not die, nor will the fire be quenched, and they will be lonesome to all mankind. So then the teacher says, I want you all to find out what section that comes from. And so the student, he says, I know what it is. And he says, all right, how about you just give me what the section is? And he says, it's in the book of Isaiah. He says, oh, very good. So he stops and he says, all right, everybody, start working on your science project. Now, keep in mind, not everybody knows that he's a wizard at this time. So he grabs his stuff. And he grabs a little ingredient that he needs. He grabs a bug, throws it inside. So the bug is just in there running around. Because there's this girl that he really likes. But she ends up not liking him as much. So he decides to get a concoction together. He gets some mango jasmine. And he gets it all ready and shook it up. He gets it together and he just pours just enough. And he grabs the bug, throws it in, starts sprinkling in some. So that's just about enough. He grabs the stuff on the outside and throws it in. Then he comes out and he grabs some chula mix. It's a seasoning that he needs. So he grabs it. And it's got the hearts of a lot of women that he's had in his life. He mixes it. Puts in just enough. And he starts to look around. And he looks at the two girls that were making fun of him. And he just smirks. And he looks at them and he goes like that. And they look at him kind of scared. Like, what's wrong with this guy? They start working on their project and he notices it. They're working on some gum. A different type of flavor. They said it was supposed to be a love concoction. But the wizard says, ha, love concoction. So he says, I got something for your ass. Because he knows that he's got work to do. And he's got a very crazy mind. So he pulls out some pink dreams, some Tabitha mix. He gets it together. And it just pours just enough. Then he looks at them and says, hey, you know what? I think your boyfriend's outside. I seen him a little bit earlier. He tells them both. They look, oh, really? So they take off, go outside. So he decides to walk up to their project. And he pulls out some of their pink dreams. He says, good luck. Pours some inside of the gum and mixes it with his fingers. And he says, love is nothing but some Cassius clay. And then he squeezes it one time. And then with his middle finger, he fucking puts it down. And leaves it at that and walks back to his table. And as he's coming down from his table, he comes back and he sits there. And he's got it all together. He says, they thought they were gonna make fun of me, huh? He's like, fuck that shit. So he comes out and he starts getting the rest of his stuff. He knows that his concoction can only work if he starts getting mad, so he starts thinking of a lot of stuff that pissed him off in the past. Starts getting mad. Starts cranking his shit. Oh yeah. Alright. So then he pulls out some Jose Cuervos. It's a Dominican mix. And he starts going on. He sees it. He puts some in there. Then he looks at it and he says, I gotta mix this. So he starts mixing it. He grabs another bug and throws it in there. Starts to crush it. He mixes it. As that's going on, they have a little snack break. Because it's late in the night and everything, so they had to have their little food and everything. So he gets it all together. Gets his little milk. And he starts thinking, you know what? Some cow's milk might help my concoction. So he puts a little bit. And then the other students say, hey, what are you making over there? He says, nothing. It's none of your fucking business. They're just like, hey, man, why you always act so weird? And he says, it's none of your fucking business. They're like, oh, you're with the Twisted Tornadoes? And he's like, yeah. And then he looks at them and says, are you trying to get twisted? And they're like, oh, the Twisted Hennies, we know that they got quite a reputation. He says, I know, exactly. And so they're like, no, man, we're good. And he just drinks. He gets his food out. Starts to eat a little bit. And he says, you know what? I think what would be good is putting this in there. So he puts it in there. And he does everything else he has to do, so he cuts that. Mmm. 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 He hears all the chit chatter. And then he hears, oh, the gum. It's coming out and it's almost done. And he just laughs. They say, what's wrong? What's so funny? He says, oh, I just remembered an old joke. And they said, oh, well, can you tell us? And he says, well, I just forgot it. And they're like, come on, just tell us a joke. And he says, all right. Want to know a joke? And they're like, yeah. Like, you want to know why nobody wants me to be a cop? They're like, no, why? He's like, because if I was a cop, I'd find a perpetrator, I'd walk up to him and say, freeze! And when they freeze, say, pants on the ground, thumbs up your ass! And, oh, and as soon as I see him, oh my God, I'd be like, oh, you guys are fucking sick. Pull out my fucking taser. Ram jam sackle all over him and shit. And they're like, oh my God! Why would you do that? I said, cuz after that, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't want to do whatever the fuck they did again. So he was just like, wow, that's kind of gross. He's like, you're joking though, right? He's like, well, I am a cholo. They're like, what is that supposed to mean? He's like, if you don't get it, you don't fucking get it. So they're like, oh, I guess, whatever. So he starts to get the rest of his stuff together. Like, all right. Finds him a bud. Starts crushing it up. Throws it in the mix. Then he starts eating and starts thinking what else he needs because he can't remember all the recipes. And then he remembers. Oh. I need a lover's hair. So he starts looking around. And he finds one of the people that has been known to have long ears. And he says, I see a bunny over there. And he grabs him. Finds another bunny. Grabs him. And then he gets it. He got their hairs. And then he puts it into the mix. And he starts thinking to himself, man, I still need something else. So he starts thinking to himself, what else do I need? He doesn't know. So then he sees another bear. He's like, hey, come here. He comes up. He's like, what is it, man? He's like, hey, do you remember that ingredient that I need? He's like, for what? Except for that lover's potion. The guy's like, you know, we don't do magic here. So why do you go by those little myths, those little stories? And he looks at him and he says, what if I told you those ain't just stories? They're not myths. He's like, look. He's like, what do you think you are? Harry Potter or something? And that's when he gets mad. He's like, you know, Harry Potter is a bitch compared to what my grandpa could do. And he's no Slytherin or nothing like that. And so he looks at him and he says, you must be just joking, man. Even that's just a myth. It's just a movie. He says, oh, really? It's like, what is wrong with you animals, some of you? He's like, oh, what are you trying to say? Like, I think you're more human than animal. He says, well, that's kind of rude. He says, well, listen here, little bear. I want to know that ingredient. Find it for me, will you? He's like, all right, only because you're my cousin. So thanks. So he starts looking around for it and everything. He says, here it is. He says, oh, how can I forget? I need some blueberry juice. And it's gotta have some blue heart in it. And they're like, oh, what is that supposed to mean? I said, oh. Nothing. So he starts to get ready. He's thinking about where he could get this juice from. He's like, man, I need to find somebody that can give me the goodies. So he starts looking in class. And he just stops and he just slams on the table. Everybody just looks. What the fuck was that? They look at him. Hey, which one of you got some goodies? I need some juice. But not only, just not any type of juice. I need some blueberry juice that's got some love in it. Some deep blue love in it. And they're like, well, I think Grace got it. So he says, oh. Says Grace? Yeah. I'm gonna need a little bit of your goodies. Blueberry juice. She says, well, why? I said, don't ask no fucking questions. I just need it. I'm making a project here and I really, really need it. She's like, well, you know my name is Grace. He's like, yeah, so? She said, you're supposed to say please. So he says, oh, how can I forget? He says, well, Grace. Can I please have it? She says, fine, but you gotta come and get it. So he says, fine. She goes walking up to her table. And he's coming back. He says, thank you. We good. Squeezes it and wrings it out. And he says, well, thanks. He's like, but I already finished all of it. She's like, yeah, it's all right. I didn't need it. He says, well, it's going for my project anyways. She says it's alright. So he's trying to finish up the rest of his food. He says, well, I'll throw a little bit more of that in there. And he gets everything together. Mmm. 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 He starts to think, why hasn't it started bubbling yet? Starts to get mad. Damn it. I forgot something. And he can't figure it out at first. And then he remembers. That's right. I need some honey. So he goes into his bed. Starts looking everywhere for it. What the hell is it? And then he finds it. Oh. Good. And then Lady XO looks at him. And he looks at her. Goes, is there a problem? And she looks at him and says, no. She says, you know, you're looking pretty cute today. She says, well, it's all in the jeans. So he grabs out his bottle and everything. And he looks at her. And he says, you know, I could share some of this honey with you later if you'd like. She's like, well, I'm trying to stop the honey. And he says, wow, you look very sweet, honey. Let me know if you ever need any honey, honey. She says, well, thank you for the offer. And he goes, anytime. So he forgets that his potion can get messed up this way. So he starts going through his thing and he's still trying to flirt with her. He's looking at her. He's like, oh, she looks so sexy. And he grabs one. Bites into it. And then he goes, this one's for you. Holds it like a flower. She's like, what is it? He's like, oh, maybe the detail's not good. He's like, how about now? She's like, oh, I see it. It's a heart. He's like, that's right. And I did it all just for you. And it falls into the concoction. He says, oh, shit. She's like, well, what? And he's like, that wasn't supposed to be in there. And he looks around. What can I get it out with? And he finds something. Gets the key. He says, shit. Hopefully it wasn't in there long enough to ruin it. Shit. he sees that it starts to change a different color. And then it just settles. He's like, shit. Grabs another piece to try to calm it down, and it does. He's like, oh, let me mix it. So he starts mixing it in there. Start jamming and breaking up all the pieces. He notices that the color isn't the way it's supposed to, but it keeps changing back and forth on it. And he shows. It's like shit. And all of a sudden, it just goes to its normal color. It's like, oh, thank God. I thought it was gonna be bad. So he takes another bite. This time he moves his stuff just to be a little bit more careful this time. He looks around. Oh shit, what can I do? Class was already about to end. He has his whole concoction ready. So he gets himself something. He's like, shit. He thinks to himself, I need a vial to put it in. Because if not, it's gonna spoil. So he says, shit. He decides that he's gonna come back and sneak into class. So he goes and he opens up the window just a little bit, creases it. And he leaves. And then he puts his stuff into his desk. And they get ready to dismiss. Gets all his stuff, puts it all together. Puts everything away. And then the two girls come over to him and says, hey, did you mess with our stuff? And he looks at them. Why the fuck would I do that? He said, well, somebody said you came walking over here by our desk. What are you doing over here? I said, I don't need shit from you guys. What the fuck do I need from you? We're like, yeah, well, you better not mess with our stuff or else it's gonna be worse for you. I said, I wouldn't mess with your shit with the 10-foot pole. So they said, oh, all right, whatever. They leave and walk away. So then he gets his stuff and he gets ready. And he almost forgets he has to put it away. He's like, man, I'm gonna need that for later. He's like, he gets all love flustered. Oh man, this is the same apple that I made a heart for my sweet Henny. Now he starts thinking about the girl that he's with at this time. Her name is Melissa. And that's the one that he's making this concoction for. So he starts getting ready. He's like, damn man, gotta hurry up. I totally forgot that my grandpa left me something. So he gets ready and he starts going. And his brother calls him. Hello? Hey man, I left it outside already. He's like, well, where is it? He's like, when you go outside, you're gonna see it there on the counter in the hallways. So he says, oh, and he finds it. It's like, oh man, what is it? It's like, it's a wand. You just need to use it at the right moment and at the right time. and this thing is producing magic. And he says, really? So yeah, but remember, you cannot use it on anything that is toxic, and you cannot use it on any kind of molded concoctions. It's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. I'm making a love potion anyways. I needed this because I'm trying to make Melissa fall in love with me. He says, well, be careful out there. And then he's like, oh, okay, but he's like, dude, you know what? I just ran into this other girl. He's like, whoa, who? He's like, I call her my sweet Henny. She's just like some honey, just so sweet. He says, well, be careful, man. He's like, you know what happens when you go running around like that. At least be careful. And he says, yeah, I know. So he takes off. And he starts walking and walking, waiting. He starts waiting until the teacher leaves so he can go back in there, because the teacher knows that something was up. But he just didn't know what it was. He just had a weird feeling. So the kid stays outside looking, making sure the teacher doesn't get near his stuff. And he's just watching and looking and looking and looking. And he's like, damn, how long is it gonna take? And he's waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. He says, fuck, it's gonna be hard to get to this. So he says, you know what? I don't know how long it's gonna take. I'm just gonna chill out here and then just go get something real quick and then come right back. And by the time I get back, maybe the teacher will be gone so I can sneak in and get my concoction, so I can get started tonight. So he's waiting and waiting. The teacher's there grading the papers, grading to see how everything is. And then finally the teacher's done, and he gets up and he walks away. And when he walks away, everything just stops.